what's up? It's your boy from NYC, and we are out here on Wall Street. And you might be wondering, why is it called Wall Street? Well, once upon a time, there was a literal wall stretched on this street here from Trinity Church behind me all the way to Pearl Street up to the East River. When the Dutch settled here in 1624 and established the colony of New Amsterdam, they encountered resistance from the native Lenape people as well as conflict with other European settlers. So in 1653, they erected a wooden wall from east to west to fend off their enemies. But it really isn't that effective. Eventually, the British Navy quickly takes over the colony in a bloodless coup, and they name the area New York after the Duke of York. The wall is abandoned by 1699, and the street becomes Wall Street, and you can still see the vestiges of that wall until this very day. But in December 1711, the British established something else on Wall Street between Pearl Street and Water Street, and that is New York's first ever public slave market. From 1700 to 1770, NYC had the largest number of slaves of any city in the 13 colonies. 1 in 5 New Yorkers were slaves, and half of all Manhattan families owned at least one slave. Less than a year later, in April 1712, New York witnesses its first slave rebellion just a few blocks away on Maiden Lane, which ended with the horrific executions of almost all the enslaved peoples involved. These are the dark origins of Wall Street.
Welcome to another episode of You Left Shit Out. I'm your host, CJ, or Jay, or Compton J, as I'm known on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is Compton Made Me. So check that out. Today, you may get Nick and CJ just separately. I'll do my show now, and Nick may be coming on later tonight. So look for that. We'll try to set out a link through our Substack. Great clip, just kind of condensing the history and how the history of Wall Street is connected to the Atlantic slave trade. So I thought that was a great video to start out with, but I did have another video I wanted to start with. So it was between that video and where's this other one? And this video. So I'm gonna surprise you with it. So let me kind of put the banner back up. All right, so here is the other intro that I was thinking and wanting to start with. So let's go.
So Joe Biden has been basically lying about something that happened to him in South Africa. It didn't actually happen. His campaign has now admitted that. The debate moderators did not ask him about this at the debate last night, but finally his campaign has had to fess up. Here is what he's been saying, though.
I spent my whole life fighting for civil rights, voting rights, social justice, economic justice. And that's what I'll do when I'm your president. This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto, trying to get to see him on Robbins Island. When he came to the United States, when he came to the White House, to the Senate, I was chairman of the committee, and he walked in, and most incredible thing I've ever felt in my life. He walked across in that private room with the big table we have in the executive room. And he walked over, and I said, Mr. President, he leaned, I said, thank you. Thank you for trying to come and see me.
Yikes, because I don't think that actually happened. I will give you more details.
I mean, if that happened, that's pretty amazing.
I don't know.
It did not happen. Oh, very, very funny. So, that's the main topic. The main topic is this here, LIARS. I just find it very ironic and very funny that some on the sort of pseudo left, the sort of center left, the center left, slightly center left, liberal lane, George Santos, and I'm like, just waiting, and in media, in left media, I just noticed that each in this category that still want to do this progressive Democrat sort of strategy, each have been kind of dropping a video on George Santos and not mentioning Joe Biden. Actually, somebody does in the same video. Now, this video of Emma, this is from years ago, 2 years ago or more. And I think this is when she was on TYT, which I didn't know until recently. I didn't know she started on TYT. But yeah. So we're gonna listen to this one along with some others who seem to acknowledge that Joe Biden is the same type of liar. I mean, lying about your history. I think that will fall into that sort of category, but that's actually not the first story we're going to be talking about today. But before we do that, let me go ahead and send the shout outs because I see the comments are starting to stack up. So I want to get to some of those before I can't get to too many of them. All right, so let's look at what the comments are. Let's start there first, actually. Oh, Zoya is love is in the house. So she's telling us right here. So there will be another stream. So you're getting Nick and CJ on the same day, just separate streams. Nick will be streaming. Zoya will be one of his guests discussing Ukraine updates tonight. And we have a little Ukraine in this stream too when we get to the Kyle interview on the Vanguard, which I know a lot of you have already seen that and talked about it. But as always, I'm late to a lot of things. I was late to the understanding what was going on with the opposition with forced to vote. So I get to this media stuff. I eventually watch it. It's just a lot later than I've seen. Like I still haven't seen the Sam debate with Jackson. I saw snippets. I still haven't seen the Sam debate with Brianna. Maybe I'll get around to seeing it, but tonight, sometime probably 9 Eastern, or sometime he likes to go around that time, around 6 my time, 9 Eastern. But look for the Substack notification. And then that leads me to the next announcement. So make sure you join our Substack. Substack is good for 2 reasons. You get the notifications you get the notifications for unannounced streams or even scheduled streams, so you just know what they're about and you have the direct link. And then you get the notifications of our clips. And then the Max Blumenthal interview that was expected today, that got pushed till tomorrow. So Max Blumenthal will be tomorrow and not today. And is there any other updates with scheduling I need? So once you join the Substack, you'll get the other benefit is getting the Discord link. You can also get that by being a Patreon member, which is scrolling at the bottom there. And another, let me just look at it to calm my nerves and make sure it's still saying as such before I say what I'm going to say here. Okay, so I can say it. So we have hit 29,000 of our goal of hitting 30,000. So here is where we're at, 29,022. So thank you for all that has subscribed. Thank you for those that are suggesting and liking, and we can put that up here now. So let's like the stream. Let's get some more subscribers. Like this stream. We're at 80, going from 85 to 90 subscribers. Let's push to 90 subscribers. 90 likes. So if everybody hit that like button, we'll get a couple of more people in here. And I think I want to start with the. I'm going to go back to your comments, so don't worry. But I think I want to start with the Kshama story. And let me get to it in just a second here. So let's put it in the window. So this is, let me take this one off now. And now we are here. So I told people in another stream, I kind of read part of the tweet and I said, I was going to be covering this in a segment. So this is the segment. So Kshama calls out AOC, and this is something that's needed, especially since Kshama is part of the DSA, and she has a sort of a large voice. As a local official, she sort of has a national sort of voice. So this means something. This means that some people are that the professional managerial class can't say, "Oh, we're not hearing this critique from people." So it's important that Kshama makes these critiques. And yeah, so let me toss up some of your comments here. 1 second. Yeah. TYT dragons are the future of U.S. politics. Thumbs up, thank ya. Anyone on? I don't know that one. Double the trouble, double the fun. Daytime CJ, nighttime Nick and Zoya. Yes. So Emma started at TYT doing segments with Jordan. Then she did her own thing on the show, like less tense Anna. Like a less tense Anna. That's funny. All right, so let's dive into this first topic just to get warmed up for the main topic here. And I don't know. Actually, I got two main topics because you could consider the Vanguard's interview with Kyle Kulinski, sort of, and they start out on foreign policy. They talk about other stuff, but they start out on foreign policy. We're kind of going to zero in on the foreign policy part. So we'll be talking about that. We might get to some of the other part of the video, but we'll see how time goes. Let's continue to thank you those that have done so. And now, Aaron, we're going to start the segment here. Kshama Sawant, I'm sorry, Aaron, let's do that again. Kshama Sawant calls out AOC. Oops. And it's a beautiful thing. So let's start here with this tweet. This is just the recent call out because we can remember she also called her out and actually called for DSA to what is it called? Excommunicator. I forget the zoning out on the word to kick her out of DSA. I guess I'll just say that. So this is the latest one here, and it's about forced to vote. And if you're on Twitter, you've already seen this, but Case Study QB put out the video of AOC's Instagram where she's I think it's a live stream and she's talking to her fans or her audience. And she kind of goes off the rails. Anyway, she posts this, or Case Study QB posts this, and shout out to Case Study. And Kshama obviously watches it, and this is her response. Working people as AOC, I'll make this slightly larger. Working people as AOC, why didn't you and Squad use force to vote? The right wing Freedom Caucus did. AOC's response: if we were to fight for something, we'd cause relational harm with the Democratic establishment. So we don't fight for anything. And that's spot on. And let's continue because she further, she quote tweeted herself. So let's bring up the second tweet here. Bring it into the screen. She quote tweets herself and says this: AOC recently claimed she couldn't fight against Democratic leadership on behalf of workers because it would cause relational harm with those party leaders. What about the vast and very real harm taking place in the absence of such a fight for working class people? And that's one of the first questions I'm going to zero in on, or we want to zero in on. Because this is the question that essentially those that are to the left of the progressive Democrat Jacobin DSA type, we're to the left of those people on a lot of things, and this is our point that we make. You're a politician, so the incoming you're taking is part of the job of being politician. The incoming violence that regular people are taking is not part of the job, or shouldn't be part of the job of the government, but it is. So what about the vast and very real harm taking place in the absence of such a fight for working class people? Let's see, Palestinians. We see every day. There's a few accounts that the main RBN account on Twitter retweets, and there's literally like 3 or 4 videos that and that's not even all the videos they have of just the brutality of what's happening there. So in the absence of that fight, we have that. In the absence of that fight, we have Yemen. In the absence of that fight, we have Senate parliamentarians taking away the opportunity for $15 minimum wage. So these are all the things that this question sort of alludes to. Is what about the vast and very real harm taking place in the absence of such a fight for working class people? And we're seeing it even in inflation, where you have eggs. I saw somewhere I had a picture. Eggs are at $11.99, but wages are at $7.99. I should bring that up, but no, I don't want to mess up the presentation here. But yeah, it was still making $7.25, but eggs. So eggs, you got to work more than an hour just to get a dozen eggs, or maybe that was an 18-pack. So in the absence of the fight, or the lack of the fight from AOC, the Squad, Progressives, Rokana, Pramila Jayapal, Mark Pocan, all of them are those things. And then, I mean, homeless population going up. And understand, we were talked about this yesterday during the RBN Live. Homelessness, unhoused, is not having a physical house. But the homeless population it would be a lot larger if they included people who have to live with relatives, where you have a roof, but you are still without a house. You are still homeless. So the term homeless is more of an umbrella, where you're not able to afford your own place, but you're staying with somebody, so you're not unhoused. And then we have unhoused people. I kind of think that's an umbrella term. But anyway, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation. So now let me go to a couple of things here from Kshama, and hopefully we'll have her back on soon. She's somebody that's busy doing work in the community, so we admire that, and we encourage her to doing that, and that takes precedent, of course, of doing interviews. So what now I want to do is kind of go to a couple of her just speaking, where we can kind of see the difference. And I think this is the first one here. Let's start with this video. Let's hope that Twitter's not acting up today, because it does sometimes. Let's start here and listen to what she says here.
Trying to do something for the people that they represent, ordinary people, working people, the marginalized. But the catch is in the question of how are they actually going to challenge the democratic establishment. And I think, in terms of what you said about, people pushing back against us, saying, well, now is not the right time, there'll be another bite at the apple. Well, remember what they were saying when we were arguing that when a section of the left was saying, yes, absolutely, there is an opportunity. Instead of just voting for Pelosi as speaker, actually the squad should withhold the vote and use it as a moment to build real pressure for Medicare for all. But what we said, and at least what Socialist Alternative said, was that it's not just as some sort of drama, or sort of meaningless political theater, but to actually use the force the vote tactic in the context of helping to build mass rallies and conferences around Medicare for all. But at that time, AOC and also sections of DSA, they said that, well, this is not the moment to use your political capital. And in fact, I remember AOC in her response to force the vote, and I think she genuinely meant this. She said, instead of this, we should fight for something winnable, which is $15 an hour. Well, here we are talking about $15 an hour. And again, Biden, Harris, Schumer, Pelosi, all the stalwarts, big business stalwarts of the party are throwing excuse after excuse. It's the parliamentarian, it's the rules, it's the decorum, it's Joe Manchin. So I think what we have to point to is sort of the endless logic of making excuses for the Democratic establishment. So today it's this excuse, tomorrow it's another excuse. Yesterday it was Medicare for all, today it's $15 an hour. This is a failed strategy. I think that's what we need to point out. It's not so much about whether AOC is genuine or not. The question is the strategy of not being willing to go into open combat against the establishment, is that working or not? And it's clearly not working. And of course, right now we are talking about what the squad should do. And I hope they're having a meeting right now about how they're going to withhold their vote and reject the gaslighting against them that they are somehow holding anything up. They're not holding anything up. It's big business Democrats and the Republicans who are holding things up for anything for working people. And I hope that they're having that strategy discussion this weekend. And no doubt millions of people.
Now, the benefit of history and hindsight is that we can now say, when she says she hopes in this video, because this is a year or so ago, we can now say, no, they've been proven to be failures at every point. So again, put your personal critiques of AOC, the dress, all that stuff aside. Drill down to the basic point, and that is the strategy working? Is the strategy of being nice, trying to get committee assignments and all of that, is that working for them? That's the question. And that's what Kshama is saying here. Now let's go to another video I have. Where is it? Another video where she also makes a great point, just to show the contrast between an AOC and a Kshama. So here, this is a tweet I just wanted to show. This is back from May of last year. And this is me. Always putting Bernie and AOC to shame. Kshama's approach is the future. So that was me even then, but let me show you why, and let's zero in on what she writes here. And let me get this a little larger for you to see. As a worker representative, I take only the average worker's wage. The rest after taxes of my 146,000 city council member salary goes into a solidarity fund for labor and social movements. I just donated 20,000 from this fund to Amazon Labor for the union struggle at Amazon. Wow. That was a funny joke, but I don't want to get off sidetrack. So again, that's my tweet from a while back, and now let's look at another video here. And then I think we might be able to wrap here. So let's listen to this one.
Party's leadership is not on the side of working people. So yes, you are going to be in conflict with them. There is no space, there's no universe where you can be at peace with the power brokers of the establishment and yet win victories for working people. Such a thing is not going to happen. If you want to win victories for working people, you are going to have to take on.
think about the logic in what she just said, and think about the logic of what they're trying to sell us. That they're going to be at peace with the powers that be and somehow get what you want. That's what they're selling us. Why wouldn't it have already happened then? And I'll rewind it so you can catch the point again. Uh-oh. When you go back, sometimes it does that. I'll just refresh and hope that Twitter's not acting up, but we shall see. All right, so let's see if it's working again and get back into this discussion here.
Not on the side of working people. So yes, you are going to be in conflict with them. There is no space, there's no universe where you can be at peace with the power brokers of the establishment and yet win victories for working people. Such a thing is not going to happen. If you want to win victories for working people, you are going to have to take on that conflict. As long as our leaders on the left believe that it is about parliamentary arithmetic and insider tactics, it is going to be a death knell for the movement. We are not going to win Medicare for all by an insider strategy where you think your political capital depends on whether or not Nancy Pelosi is happy with you. Well, Nancy Pelosi is never going to be happy with you if you're going to fight for working people, because Nancy Pelosi is not on the side of working people. It's as simple as that.
And that last point she makes is the point. Like, you think Nancy Pelosi is... How can Nancy Pelosi please the people who are literally pouring in millions upon top of millions of dollars and do Medicare for all? How is that supposed to work? But that's the strategy that the progressive strategy and people who buy into this are trying to sell us. Now let's go to the final video before we close out this segment and get to the Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire segment. And is this the one? Now, this is... Okay. Wow. Should see how she talks to them there. But all right, this is the one here. All right, so let's listen to this video on bad faith with Chris Hedges.
It should be a progressive challenge.
Oh. May have to do the refresh. Let's see. Yeah, may have to do the refresh on this one too. Let's see. All right, so we'll end with this one. This is her talking about a progressive challenger to the Joe Biden administration in 2024.
Progressive challenge.
Let's see if it plays. No. Maybe it doesn't play when I make it big. Let's see. We'll try it one more time, and I'll leave it. I won't expand it. I'll just turn the volume up here. So that could be it.
The left in a militant campaign, I absolutely don't think it should be from the Democratic Party. And I do want to address the specific names that you brought up. But before doing that, I want to say it's much more about the strategy, the political strategy that we as working people use to bring a real challenge to the Democratic and Republican candidates. And the starting point, the ABCs of that strategy are you don't run as a Democrat. Because look at what they did to Bernie Sanders. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry of progressive Democrats supported Bernie in 2020. They were, when I went to the Tacoma Dome to speak at Bernie's rally, they were all there with me. I know these people. They don't support Bernie's politics, but they were there because it was so easy. There was nothing at stake to get on the Bernie bandwagon at that time, and yet then go ahead and support Biden once Bernie was crushed, because we all knew that was going to happen. The Democratic Party elite were going to use some trick or another to get Bernie off the books. And then you got James Clyburn, you got South Carolina, And lo and behold, it happened. We didn't know exactly how it would happen, but we knew it would happen. So the first obligation we have as people on the left, if we are serious organizers, if we have any loyalty to the working class, is to first be crystal clear about that. Whether it makes you popular or not, be crystal clear. The Democratic Party is not the way to go. And I don't want to hear, these things that people come up with on the left where they'll say, well, it's the ballot line, it's the technicality. No, this is no technicality. This is, if you don't run as an independent, you are not taking on the fight that needs to be taken on, which is to present an independent fight back. And if you don't, Bernie was the strongest expression so far of the burning desires that working people have. And I have a lot of appreciation for Bernie, but look what happened. It went nowhere.
Yeah, we can stop it there. So, just wanted to point that out. Promise I would cover that, and I think we can end it there and move to the next topic. Today's show may be slightly shorter here, so we're gonna move to the next topic now, and that is LIARS. And let's move this into the box here. All right, let's move this one into the box, and we'll move to the next topic. And the larger heading is just LIARS. We got a couple of banners here for this segment.
Critics also accuse Santos.
First, we want to set the scene for why are we even making a comparison. So this is one of the latest, I think it's today, a few hours ago, 9 hours ago. So this is one of the later news sort of segments, corporate news segments on the topic. So we're going to start here. But first, let's make sure join our Substack so you get notifications of when we go live in clips. Also, thank you because we hit 29,000 overnight. Thank you. We're on our way to 30,000, which was our goal. Now, we're going to hit our goal. It might be a month or two past the time we wanted to do it, but we still hit it. I'll take it 2 months after our original goal. I'll take that to hit 30,000. But thank you for those that have been subscribing. We're at 120 or so likes, 130 or so likes, but we have 200 people watching. Could we push another 55 or so people? Let's get to like 185. Let's get to 185 likes for this segment. We need a lot of people in the chat so that we can have this discussion. I'm hoping that there are some progressive people, progressive Democrats in the chat that may push back on and say, hey, wait. No, George Santos is different than Joe Biden. And here's why. Because we would love to hear your point of view. So if you hit that like button, let's get some more people into the chat. And let's continue. All right, so LIARS, George versus Joe. And let's start here with this video here.
This morning, Republican leaders have assigned New York Congressman George Santos seats on 2 House committees while he faces federal and state investigations. He recently acknowledged embellishing his resume, making up details about his work experience in education, including his claim that he attended Baruch College.
Did you graduate from Baruch? Did you graduate from there?
Yeah.
So did I.
I did.
But he did not. And now, in a newly surfaced radio interview, Santos is heard falsely claiming he was also a star volleyball player at Baruch.
Look, I sacrificed both my knees and got very nice knee replacements from HSS playing volleyball.
Critics also accuse Santos of misrepresenting himself as Jewish. A former roommate says Santos often used 2 names while raising money for his animal rescue nonprofit.
He used Zabrowski for his Friends of Pets United, his GoFundMe, and he would say, "Oh well, the Jews will give more if you're a Jew.
There's no evidence that nonprofit ever existed.
lying.
Now, Democratic Congressman Richie Torres is requesting the Federal Election Commission investigate how Santos financed his campaign. Santos reportedly lent more than $700,000 to the campaign after earning just $55,000 2 years earlier.
Mr. Santos either illegally coordinated with an independent expenditure or he illegally received a campaign contribution through a pass-through. In either case, Mr. Santos likely broke campaign finance law.
Santos has not responded to the complaint sent to the FEC. The two House committees assigned to Santos are low profile: the Science, Space, and Technology Committee and the Small Business Committee. Meanwhile, House Republicans have reinstated Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar to committees. They were stripped of their assignments in 2021.
They had
for
to
displays
include
of
that.
violent extremism. Both are now joining the influential House Oversight Committee.
They had to include the Marjorie Taylor Greene part. They had to slip that in before that segment was over. Very interesting. All right, so let's go now to a clip from or about Joe Biden. So that's George Santos. I think that's how you say his name, Santos. And now let's go to this clip with Joe Biden, and let's see if it's any. Do you hear any similarities in these two people, these two liars, pretty much? Oops.
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago, at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now, that's a little too much because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, and all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge that Biden had appropriated a...
You know how they go, George Santos said this, and they keep finding out other lies? Isn't this the same thing? He's like, oh, that's the only time I said it. And oh, but we found this other time when... Like this George Santos is Joe Biden reincarnated.
A famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
Or the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
He was given an F.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
like Ukraine.
I've been dumb.
To the political community in Washington, it all seems of a piece. Plagiarism at law school, plagiarism on the stump.
The great communicator. Strike that. The great imitator.
You don't steal verbatim, or when you do, as he did 99% of the time, you give credit.
Biden's critics say he sells himself as a man whose words and visions can inspire a new generation in politics. But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising.
Is it a wise idea, though, to take something that personal anyway from another politician and try and appropriate it to your own campaign.
I think it was a stupid thing to appropriate material that was really very personal, that was someone else's.
Most people didn't know who he was, you know, Joe Biden, and now they're going to say, oh yeah, he's the guy who plagiarized.
There's a lot of people.
Politically, that's devastating. These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
If they're going to do things that are stupid as well as immoral, then they're probably too dumb to have the job of president.
Voters are going to have to decide whether he was dishonest or dumb.
Senator Joseph Biden may have more explaining to do.
The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign.
Do you not keep seeing these different news reports like we're seeing about George Santos? Do you not see that? This is the same thing. We're seeing all these news reports. Oh, this find out is the same. He had a same section of a time of his history where the same exact thing happened. All right, let's finish this one out.
Campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student.
Oh, none of that. How is that not what George Santos is doing and has done? I did this. What was it? He was a track star. I think I'm going to get to a video that names some of his stuff. But he was some sort of, what was it, hockey or tennis, volleyball player or something like that. This is the same thing. Who did it best, though? Who's doing it best? George Santos? Is he doing a good Joe Biden? Let's continue with this, and then we can move to the main event, which is the analysis of the foreign policy discovered in the video of Vanguard interviewing Kyle Kulinski. So I'm gonna rewind it just so you can hear that last funny part. It's funny to me, so let's go.
My class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
And I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
Joe Biden was victimized by the truth.
Bye Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover.
Is Joe Biden dead meat, yes or no?
I think so.
Bob?
It's in terminal condition.
Terminal. Eleanor?
Yes, unless he comes in third in Iowa.
Morton?
Dying.
I say dead. We'll be right back.
Yeah. All right. So it's really true. This is more of a funny story. This is not really a serious story because this is funny.
Critics also accuse Santos of misrepresenting himself as Jewish. A former roommate says.
Hit the back button. But let's go to another thing here. Kyle appears in this segment also because he points out the lie. And like Emma in the beginning, the intro, one of the intro videos, the second intro video that I did, where she's talking about his lying. I think this is the same event, but let's listen. Oh, let's unmute it first.
Biden was caught in an absolutely absurd lie while campaigning in South Carolina.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robbins Island.
So when people heard this, everybody's like, whoa, wait. You were arrested while trying to see Nelson Mandela. That's a big story. In fact, it's so big, it had to be like reported at the time, right? Right? So they went back and they were like, that's weird. Seems to be no evidence of that. That UN ambassador that he just referenced, that guy's still around. They went and asked that guy. That guy's like, no, didn't happen. Joe, what are you doing, Joe? What are you doing? He acts like he's still stuck way back in the day when there weren't cameras at every single event. Bro, you're on tape. You're on video. What are you doing? That's a Trumpian level lie. That might even eclipse a Trumpian lie. Well, no, Trump has told some amazing ones in his life. I didn't go bankrupt is one of my favorites, when his businesses went bankrupt at least 6 times. When he said, that wasn't me, the John Miller, remember the John Miller story where he would call people at these magazines and tell them amazing stories about himself, and he was pretending like he was Trump's publicist, John Miller. He's like, nope, that wasn't me. Nope, not even true. Not even. And it's
So Kyle's bringing up another president that lies. Another president. So you have Donald Trump, you have Joe Biden, or politician, I said president. Another politician that lies, and this is the reason why I have this here. Lying is part of the job. Lying is part of the job. So let's listen to a little more of what he says here, and then we'll round it out with one last video. We'll loop back to that Emma video.
Thinks of this are terrible too. South Carolina, a lot of the Democratic voters there are people of color. They're black folks, and you like went out of your way to tell a lie specifically about a historical figure who's very important in the black community the world over, Nelson Mandela. I mean, what a hero. And you tell a lie like that? Guys, if Bernie Sanders told that lie, do you have any idea what the backlash would be? They would be screaming for him to drop out. They'd say this is unforgivable. Look at this. He's got to lie in order to look more appealing to black voters. How sad is that? How pathetic is that? Drop out. You're shameful what you just did. Shameful. Get out of here. But when it's Joe Biden, not much talk about it. To be fair, there's been some articles that covered it, which is good. But there's really not much talk. Certainly they've ignored it in mainstream media. They're like effectively trying to bury it. And his campaign like casually backed off of it. Took a couple steps back. But this, I mean, it's so amazing. Like, he could just do this and kind of get away with it because he's got a media apparatus that's not really doing their job well. And by the way, Biden is not their favorite candidate. He's just not. I think that the media would much rather have Mayor Pete. I think the media would much rather have Klobuchar.
Okay, he goes into some other part. Now let's go to the Emma video. And I think we'll be able to round out this segment and get to the main event, because it is a longer video. The analysis,
so Joe Biden
analysis is a longer video. So, but let's listen again to this, where they kind of cover the Mandela part again. So I'm going to kind of fast forward back to the part similar to where we left off from the intro.
Saying the story. So Joe Biden's 2020 campaign has admitted the former vice president was not arrested for trying to visit Nelson Mandela at a South African prison during apartheid, after the Democratic candidate used the claim at least 3 times during appearances in recent weeks. In campaign visits to Nevada and South Carolina, Mr. Biden claimed he was arrested with the US ambassador to the United Nations in Soweto, despite there being no publicly available evidence of the incident. It is also unclear why Mr. Biden would have been arrested in Soweto for trying to visit Mandela, as the city is hundreds of miles away from the island where the anti-apartheid activist was imprisoned. He took a trip with a congressional delegation in the 70s. This is their excuse. He was separated from the Congressional Black Caucus members he was traveling with at the airport when he landed. Kate Bedingfield, Mr. Biden's communications director, told reporters on Wednesday. When making that remark, he was talking about his long record fighting apartheid. He was one of the leading voices in the United States Senate in the 80s. However, Ms. Bedingfield could not justify Mr. Biden's use of the word arrest or a coda he added to the story in which Mandela personally thanked him over the incident. And that seems very unlikely that Mandela thanked him for trying to visit him when that never actually happened.
I don't envy the job of these communications directors where they have to be like, well, yeah, but when he said that, he was talking about his long record. Okay, no, I get, yeah, he's got the long record. He also viciously lied. That was a crazy, absurd lie. And it was out before the South Carolina debate, but they didn't ask him about it. Pete Buttigieg has some scandals in his past. They asked him about his scandals, but for Biden, they didn't. And it's not the first. This isn't one random slip of the brain. Biden has been exaggerating or wholly falsifying his behavior during the civil rights movement for decades now. Sean King has done a great job of documenting many, many cases stretching back many, many years. It is all out there. And if they don't trust him, they can go back and they can look at those speeches and they can talk to the people.
So what's the difference in Joe Biden's lies and histories of lies from their own words in the progressive movement than George Santos? Because it's like
freshman Republican
you vote for this liar called Joe Biden, but you call for this other liar somehow that's somehow different or some sort of different thing. Now he's terrible. Nobody's saying George Santos is good. He's terrible, but the point of you're supporting a liar. You're literally supporting a liar and you're voting for a liar and sticking up for a liar. So let's listen to Anna's and I think Jink is in here. I've watched so many videos, I can't remember this one.
Freshman Republican Congressman George Santos has once again been exposed for lying. And this time, not only could he potentially face criminal charges, so could the individual he hired to pose as someone he wasn't in order to get campaign donations. Now, specifically, Santos paid a campaign staffer nearly $100,000 over 2 election cycles to impersonate Kevin McCarthy's chief of staff. No, it's insane. So let's get to the details. What do we know? Wealthy donors received calls and emails from a man who said he was Dan Meyer, who happens to be McCarthy's chief of staff during the 2020 and 2022 election cycles, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Now, his name was actually Sam Meal, and he worked for Santos raising money for his campaign, according to one GOP donor who actually contributed to Santos's campaign. Now, McCarthy.
Now that scene in the hallway, doesn't that eerily look like the scene that I showed you in the Joe Biden video? Reporters around him, doesn't that look eerily similar?
GOP donor who actually contributed to Santos's campaign. Now, McCarthy's team was first alerted to the scheme back in August of 2021. I think that is an important piece of information considering what Republicans are willing or not willing to do about George Santos. We'll get to that in just a moment. Santos claims that he was not aware of the impersonation and fired Meal as soon as he found out about it, which seems untrue because first off, you should just assume everything this guy says is untrue since he's been caught in so many lies. And also you should keep in mind that he hired Meal not once, but twice, both in 2020 and 2022. The Santos campaign paid Meal approximately $50,000 for his work in 2020 and approximately $42,000 for his work during the 2022 campaign. And guess what? In the latest Santos campaign, where he was ultimately.
Now, I'll spare you the second video here because I do want to get to the foreign policy discussion because it's just a more interesting discussion. This is more of a fun segment. I'll spare you a video, but you know, all of them have put out videos. Unbossed was another one that put out a video about George Santos, or multiple videos, I think, about George Santos. The same thing with the Majority Report. I'll spare you of that. I do have some to show you, but I want to get it's already coming up on an hour, and I want to get to the final segment. And my last point on this is that progressives, they are pretending like Biden's lies are worse. Biden lies about $15 minimum wage now. Santos lies about his background. Biden lies about things like sexually assaulting Tara Reid. George Santos, what? Lies about his name. Biden lies about not being a racist. Joe Biden is the one who pushed the 1994 crime bill and is not even talking about fixing it. So where do you draw your line is what I would say to the progressive Democrats who somehow are so aggrieved or so offended by George Santos lies, but you're willing to vote and campaign and vote shame people who don't want to vote for Joe Biden. So I'll close it out there, Aaron. And let me toss up some of your comments actually as part of this. So as part of this segment, because I'm sure a lot of your comments might be on here. Yeah, Biden lies about his background too. The difference is our guys' lies are wise. There's another one, student loan debt. Biden lied about the student loan debt forgiveness. That was completely set up to be to fail. People are offering $15 at the nice areas. Yeah, in California, it's 14 is I think is the state, and then it's now you're seeing around $18 an hour or something like that. Plague of narcissist liars. But I don't want to listen to right winger Anna Banana. I get it. My word as Biden. Yes. And I think we can end it there with this segment, and we're going to push to the next segment. This is the longer segment. The interview is actually an hour and a half, but of course we're not going to get to an hour and a half. We'll see what we can get to in 50 minutes or so. I'll probably get off in about 50 minutes. So we'll see how much we can get through with the analysis. I'm not starting at the beginning. I'm starting at a particular point to where they sort of get into all of the introductory kind of things we skip past. So, but before we do that, we're at 200 likes. Thanks everybody for doing that. 250 is the amount of people watching, and I think that's a good amount. So if you want to hit the like button some more, please do, but I don't have a specific ask. Join the our Substack, and you can get notifications when we go live or when we have clips, and you can also get the link to our Discord. You can also get the link to our Discord by joining the Patreon that's scrolling there at the bottom. All right, so now we're going to get into the main story, or I should say the longer story, because I guess you would say the main story is the thumbnail one, but this is the longer, sort of story we're going to be covering. Let's see. Okay, it did pick up. I was worrying that it wouldn't pick up my... So I have to kind of move it back a little bit. 1 second, because I was watching it to prepare. I think it was around 9 minutes here. So this is where we shall start. And this is Kyle, and we can just call it Vanguard, because there's a lot of things. I don't want to just call it foreign policy, because there could be some other things that we get into that I want to push forward to in their conversation. So let's listen to this. And the good thing about this being out for a while and a lot of people already watching this is that if you've already seen it, tell me what you actually, let's do that. Tell me what you think about this video if you've already seen it. Tell me your thoughts before we show everybody else if you've seen this interview, Kyle Kulinski returns to Vanguard. They talk about Ukraine. This is the latest one. So if you've seen this one, let me know in the comments, and I shall throw that up just quickly. Let's see. I'm not putting that one up. I'm not putting that one up. I'm here to speak about Kyle. Okay. All right, so I see comments, but not any really relating to the Kyle thing. So, all right, so let's just get into the video and hear what is talked about here.
One thing that we did want to talk about, Kyle, because we were chatting about this a little bit on our stream the other day, we noticed one of your videos got a lot of pushback in the comments. We always monitor how people's audiences and stuff are reacting to their takes. And it did look like you got a bit of pushback for this video about AOC being confronted by anti-war Tulsi fans. So I wanted to just quickly play the clip that we reacted to, not the whole clip, but just a couple minutes out of it.
We'd be here for 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Exactly. And then I'll tell you where I slightly disagree. I think we mostly agree, honestly, but I just want to explain where I slightly disagree, and we can kind of hash out the beef. So let's play this clip real quick, and I'll break down where I kind of differ from you.
Originally voted, you ran as an outsider. Yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine.
What?
You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China.
That is massively overstated. Who invaded who? Who invaded who? Russia invaded Ukraine. The US didn't invade Ukraine. The US didn't invade Russia. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. So in the wake of Russia invading Ukraine, why is it a bad thing to give them defensive weapons? Now, look, I've told you guys this. After the first 2 or 3 packages, I would have started to wrap it up a little bit. At this point, we've had over a dozen packages sent to Ukraine, and it's been somewhere between $50 billion and $80 billion worth of weapons sent to Ukraine. Yeah, I agree that's overkill. And yeah, I agree that's probably because the politicians are enriching the military-industrial complex. That's probably the thing that they care about first and foremost. So I don't deny that it's overkill, but to say that this means you want a nuclear war, what kind of bullshit is that? If the United States sent weapons to Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli aggression, would this guy say, "Oh, you're a war hawk. You're pro-war"? My guess is no. My guess is he would understand, well, those are defensive weapons to the Palestinians. So that's very different by its nature.
I mean, our audience, the RBN audience, is intellectually advanced enough to know that comparison is pretty terrible. I mean, just to pretend like what it is, who Israel is and what Israel is doing, colonizing a country, is the same thing of what's happening with the Israel Ukraine conflict. It's just a complete lack of understanding of what's happening. If you think that's an effective argument, if you think this is an effective analogy, it's just terrible.
Sure, because it is defensive.
All right, so there's the clip that we reacted to on the show, and where I, just slightly disagree with you. And in principle, I do agree with you. I don't think that in principle there's really anything wrong with arming countries who are under attack, or arming countries that need help, or just providing aid in general. I think the problem comes into play with the nuclear war possibility, and the fact that Putin has quite explicitly put that on the table and threatened basically Armageddon, in the words of Joe Biden, our president. So the comparison that I like to make, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, is when we illegally and offensively invaded Iraq, do you think it would have been a good idea for a country like Russia, for example, another nuclear armed superpower, to step in and start sending packages of weapons and aid, lethal aid, to Saddam Hussein to protect Iraq?
So I do like this question by Gavin. I do like this question. and this point of view on this topic here. So let's continue to listen.
From our invasion, because I don't think that would be a good idea. I think that would be escalating to nuclear armed superpowers into a potentially catastrophic situation. But how do you look at a situation like that or a hypothetical like that?
Yeah, so I agree with you, but I'll add the caveat that I do think it's debatable. And I was going to bring up a similar example. When we invaded Iraq, Iran decided they were going to arm Shia militias in Iraq to fight the Americans. And so even though, like you just said, I don't agree with that, but I certainly think it's a debatable issue, because I wouldn't say that Iran in that situation wants World War III or wants war with America. I would say Iran wants the U.S. out of Iraq, and that's why they're doing that. By the same token, I think the U.S. wants Russia out of Ukraine. So I actually...
It's like to pretend, either to pretend or unaware of how this has been a long-term plan by the United States. The encirclement of Russia. It is just it is like is having an opinion without acknowledging or involving some of the facts of the story. And let's listen some more.
Need help, or just providing aid in general. I think the problem comes into play with the nuclear war possibility and the fact that Putin has quite explicitly put that on the table and threatened basically Armageddon, in the words of Joe Biden, our president. So the comparison that I like to make, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, is when we illegally and offensively invaded Iraq, do you think it would have been a good idea for a country like Russia, for example, another nuclear armed superpower, to step in and start sending packages of weapons and aid, lethal aid, to Saddam Hussein to protect Iraq from our invasion? Because I don't think that would be a good idea. I think that would be escalating to nuclear armed superpowers into a potentially catastrophic situation. But how do you look at a situation like that or a hypothetical like that?
Yeah, so I agree with you, but I'll add the caveat that
So he agrees with this. I'll save, because I just realized he's going to say something else. I need to let's save that comment for that.
I do think it's debatable. And I was going to bring up a similar example. When we invaded Iraq, Iran decided they were going to arm Shia militias in Iraq to fight the Americans. And so even though, like you just said, I don't agree with that, but I certainly think it's a debatable issue, because I wouldn't say that Iran in that situation wants World War III or wants war with America. I would say Iran wants the U.S. out of Iraq, and that's why they're doing that. By the same token, I think the U.S. wants Russia out of Ukraine. So I actually think it's perfectly analogous in that sense. Is there any part of that you disagree with?
Well, the only thing I would say is that if we started saying we're going to start a nuclear war, going back to that time period, if we started threatening nuclear war, then no, I absolutely don't think in any way, shape, or form it would have been a good idea for Iran or any other country that had nukes. Iran didn't have nukes at the time, did they?
No, they don't even have nukes now. No.
Right, because of the Iran deal, correct? Yeah. So if they did, though, I think that any two countries that both have nukes escalating pretty much in any way would be a bad idea. So if we were saying at the time, hey, we're going to start a freaking nuclear war over this, and Iran kept sending more money and escalating the situation further and further, then no, I don't think that would have been a good idea at all. In the same way that I don't think it's a good idea for us to be escalating with Russia, who's explicitly threatening nuclear war. Again, I have all the solidarity with the people of Ukraine that have been displaced and killed by this unnecessary conflict. But I just worry that us intervening, given our track record, that it is escalating towards a nuclear war or a World War III type situation. And also, in the same way you brought up, the Israel-Palestine conflict, as much solidarity as I have with the Palestinian people, if Israel was, if we started arming Hamas, for example, I also don't think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
This is not the same comparison. Israel is a colonial power. They are colonizing Palestine. Russia's not doing that. Like, there's a difference here.
Yeah, see, that's where again I agree with you, but I think it's a nuanced conversation because
he keeps agreeing, but then says it's nuanced. That's very bizarre. I agree, but I think there's another side.
Nuclear war or World War III type situation, and also in the same way you brought up, the Israel-Palestine conflict. As much solidarity as I have with the Palestinian people, if Israel was, if we started arming Hamas, for example, I also don't think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, see, that's where again I agree with you, but I think it's a nuanced conversation because in principle, what I have a problem with the U.S. or anybody for that matter arming non-Hamas, non-extremist Palestinians for self-defense. I'd say, yeah, I mean,
non-Hamas, so a white power structure again gets to decide what is righteous defense and what's not. How about not? Why is the question though with Palestine? This is another layer of why this comparison is wrong. Is because you're asking the question of why this will be like us funding Palestine, but we're funding it. No, this will be like us funding Russia in your comparison, because that's what the United States is doing. In your own comparison, you're making it like Russia is Israel and United States is funding Israel. I mean, like I said, this is a terrible comparison, but if you want to use this comparison, the United States in your comparison would be the ones funding Russia.
I mean, I think
just don't understand who. Again, I didn't grow up through the TYT era and all the people that branched off from TYT and watched them and Kyle. I barely know all of this left media sphere for like 2 years. I don't know who would listen to Kyle for information. He doesn't come off to me as being intellectually on point whatsoever. He almost sounds like he just comes up with shit on the fly, like in this conversation, where he's just, yeah, I agree with you. But then there's nuance. But then there's this, because he's trying to play both sides. He's trying to leave open, because he really doesn't have an answer. Because he really doesn't know the policy that well, and really doesn't understand it outside of the perspective of the West lens. So let me throw up a couple of, I caught 2 super chats. I love this completely ahistoric world they're living in where the U.S. has never done anything in good faith. Exactly. IRT geopolitics. All this hypocritical banter seems to have you exasperated here. Have a donation and thank you for your coverage of what the bourgeois boutique left seeks to cover. Both sides aren't burnt crispy done. I kind of botched. I hope I didn't botch that too much, but thank you so much for that super chat. And let's get back to the conversation. This is a very ahistorical geopolitical viewpoint on this war. It's like you don't take into account history, even if you know it.
I think that's a debatable issue. I wouldn't be upset if somebody wanted to do that, but to your point, you'd want to add stipulations of like none of this can go to Hamas because Hamas targets Israeli civilians, etc. So
you see here where this is so blatant, and I'm gonna give Kyle the benefit of the doubt here, that he's not hearing or what his point of view is illustrating the racism, not on his part, but of the situation, because there's stipulations that's needed for money going to Palestinians. It can't go to Hamas. Is there stipulations that not for that money not to go, or for those weapons not to go to Nazis? So we need stipulations for the brown people, but we don't need stipulations for the white people. And I'm not even comparing Hamas to Nazis whatsoever. I'm just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't understand, because there's a lot of stuff in this video clearly doesn't understand. So this could be another thing, and that's why I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this.
I mean, I think we largely agree. I just think it's a very nuanced conversation.
What nuance means in the professional managerial class world is that I'm going to take a position that's not left. Understand that. When anytime Jank uses nuance a lot too, I've heard Anna a couple of times, and I've heard Sam say it, nuance is the phrase that the professional managerial class uses as cover when they're going to be taking a right position. Watched enough of their videos where I'm picking up on that. So beware of their use of nuance. It's the same way of their use of solidarity. They don't mean solidarity in the way that solidarity is meant. They mean solidarity as unity. So let's listen.
I do agree that nuclear weapons does change the analysis. And I think you'd have to be like very hard-headed not to concede that point. That yes, nuclear weapons, it raises the stakes and it makes it so you have to be more cautious. But then I do want to ask you though, because I still stand by that I would have been fine, and I was fine with the first 2 or 3 packages of weapons going to Ukraine. I would have added the caveat that they should be tracked and none of it should get into the hands of the Azov battalion and all that stuff. But by your logic, saying, hey, since they're threatening nuclear war,
giving Kyle credit, he brings it up here. But like I said, think of the dynamic. If there were ever to be kind of layers on top of layers of oversight they would have, compared to Ukraine, they're just tossing money out.
Your war, it's like it's a whole different calculation, which I agree with. But would you then say like we shouldn't have sent anything to them at all?
No,
because if we didn't do that, then they would have been steamrolled.
You mean they would have peace? We would have peace. In the beginning, Vladimir Putin said, "Yeah, Zelensky can stay in power." They would have came in. Remember when Russia came in and they were playing playing softly, capturing people instead of killing them. Remember that? So if the United States never gave them money and they didn't have the ability to put up any sort of defense, they would have had a negotiated peace in the beginning, which they were already doing. This is why the boutique left, the professional managerial class, and the pseudo left, the NATO left, all the same overlapping category. This is why they get it wrong. They have no idea what they're talking about on foreign policy. You see it with Crystal Ball on Breaking Points, and why she literally, the foreign policy segments, Sagar is talking for like 90% of the entire thing, and he just, what do you think? Yeah, and she just says, yeah, that's kind of bad, and blah blah blah. It's not no. Well, we should do is this, no sort of left perspective that is given, and they're freaking terrible at foreign policy. This is the reason why they don't hold it at a high priority when selecting candidates. This is why they throw out stupid shit like Marianne Williamson. Because foreign policy, it doesn't affect them. Doesn't affect their relatives, nothing. So let's continue.
You know, I mean, the fact that they're even still hanging in there is a testament to the fact that we have basically allowed them to continue to be a country effectively. So do you agree with me that, you know what, hey, the first 2 or 3 times, you know, you can give 2-3 billion, whatever it is, in weapons so they have a chance to defend themselves? Or would you say, hey, since Russia has nuclear weapons, like, don't fuck with them at all, so don't give Ukraine any weapons? What would your take on that?
Gavin a chance to answer that, but I do have.
There's a question on the left on whether an imperialist power who set up a coup to have all of this happen should be funding Ukraine people. How is that even a question on the left? How is that? You know what they would call this? Nuance. Nuance is used when they want to take a left position. Remember that. I'm going to keep saying that. Nuance is the tool used, or the phrase used, when they want to cover up taking a right position. And that's mean right of center, not right as incorrect. So let's continue here.
You have one more thing that I think kind of does, you know, kind of relate to your question, Kyle. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is how much you think, you know, United States encroachment and NATO encroachment actually played a role in Russia's hostility towards Ukraine. So Gavin, go ahead and, I don't want to like cut you off, but I want to follow up and talk about that as well.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. My answer is honestly no. I don't think that the U.S. should have intervened in any way. And like, again, there's really no good answers in this conflict, but I have to take the stance that given our track record, even just in the last 20 years as a nation, as a warring nation, as an imperialist power, I don't think we have any moral authority or any moral high ground in which to be intervening in these sort of conflicts, especially with a nuclear armed superpower. If the U.S. had like a perfect track record and we ourselves had not engaged in illegal offensive invasions in the last 20 years, then maybe that would be different. If we were just like a, completely neutral, good country, but that's just not the case. And again, given the massive hypocrisy of us intervening when we ourselves are guilty of the exact same thing, and probably would have gone to war with Russia if they had tried to intervene when we did the exact same thing, I just don't think it's our place. So maybe if other countries that didn't have a similar track record as us wanted to get involved and help out, that's totally fine. But the way I see it is that there's a 100 humanitarian crises unfolding around the world right now, most of which we're enabling, most of which we're facilitating, and we just can't step in and be the world police, unfortunately. So I do think that given my anti-interventionist perspective on this matter, no, I don't think we should have really intervened at all.
I mean,
let's stop there. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good answer that Gavin gives. And I'm anti-interventionist. I mean, it's an extra layer of word. I mean, to me, anti-war covers all of this. Not the pseudo anti-war, but the actual anti-war, which is also anti-interventionist. That's part of it. What do you think he says here? But what this is also missing throughout this whole conversation is, no, we shouldn't be giving them weapons because they're Nazis. That's the one. But let's set that aside. No, we shouldn't be giving weapons because we're the ones who overthrew the democratically elected president to set this up. They're still not injecting that. Like, that is almost just a footnote that should be laced through the conversation when answering these questions. That has to be the backing of in any answer, that the U.S. has set this up and is literally the information is coming out where they're admitting the Minsk agreement, that was just to buy them time for this. So it is completely dealing in a world where you buy the facts that have been approved by the ruling class. And those facts is that this is not unprovoked. Now, what they do as leftists, I guess this makes them left, they just acknowledge it early in the conversation, but they don't apply it to none of their answers. Let's continue with this interview.
I don't think that's a crazy opinion. I think that's a fair opinion. But I would just say that then, without a doubt, Ukraine today would be Russia. It wouldn't be Ukraine.
God, good Lord. Good thing Nick wasn't here for that. His head would explode on that one. So either Kyle is oddly uninformed on this, or he knows it and he's just going to still stay within the boundaries of the approved narrative. Because that answer he just gave makes it seem like Russia is like, it's like Israel is coming. I'm going to invade. Now he's gonna allude to something else that kind of talks about this. But I'm going to invade everywhere, as if it wasn't the Donbass shelling, as if it wasn't the U.S.-backed overthrow of the democratically elected president there, and if it's not the weapons sent to a non-NATO country that's sitting in there, as if none of this stuff exists. Tell me this, and I'm going to bring this analogy up again. If you're facing, Kyle, somebody with a gun in their holster, then that person begins to reach for their gun. You're having an argument. The gun's in a holster. That person goes like this. Are you going to wait for them to pull it out and actually pull the gun, pull the trigger, before you physically respond? That's what you're going to do? It's almost like this is not real people, real events. This is just a conversation of strategy, like that's, figuring out things like that. That's more of what it feels like the conversation is to him. Yeah, funny. I'm not gonna put that's crazy. I'm not gonna put that. But let's continue.
Ukraine would be gone.
Right. And that kind of leads into
Ukraine would not be gone. If we never funded them, this thing would be over. Multiple reports have come out that the UK in February of 2022, I think it's Boris, came in and said, no, flew out there. No, there will be no peace agreement. Here goes some more money. They were on the verge of a peace agreement. Zelensky and Russia was on the verge of a peace agreement, and it was stopped. So what would have happened would a peace agreement would have happened within 2 weeks. And it likely would have never been any invasion whatsoever. If the United States had been out of it since 2014.
Into my question with you, Kyle, because I think that, part of my, obviously this is a nuanced, question, and it's so easy to come off as like, cold or like, whatever. I don't want to like come across like I'm not considering the, the turmoil and the will and the, of the, people of Ukraine. But to me, it does seem like if we're, trying to take a bird's eye view at this and look at it, as imperialist powers would, as, Putin will look at Russia and its position on the global stage, and Biden and the generals will look at the United States in its position on the global stage, and you look at what's happened, and you have a NATO agreement that's post World War II, right? And that was initially with the Soviet Union, but it's been honored by Russia. But the agreement was that there wouldn't be any encroachment onto Russia's border, right? And the United States and NATO have completely ignored that. And you can see over time in like those progressive maps where they change the color based off of who, has been brought into NATO, that they now have encroached on Russia's border, and it's got closer and closer and closer. And then you also have to think about the fact that, why does the U.S. have any interest in Ukraine, right? Why are we more interested in Ukraine and their sovereignty than we are about the sovereignty of Yemen? Right? Why are we not so concerned about what's going on over there that we have to send aid packages to Yemen when instead we're just, letting Biden bend it over and take it from MBS, regardless of how he treats, Biden in regards to oil prices? We're still supporting them. So it's clear to me that it's mostly the oil, right? The natural resources that are in Ukraine. And I think that's why most of NATO's, invested in this at all, to the fact that they've entertained it at all. I don't think it's so much the fact that we care if Ukraine is reduced to rubble, in the same sense that we don't really care if Yemen is reduced to rubble, or if Syria is reduced to rubble. But in this case, there's, money to be made and there's oil to be had. So I'm just wondering if you think that, this is, again, one of our corrupt ventures that's just, there to be, a washing machine for corrupt money to go back into the hands of the military industrial complex, to better position the United States and to hinder Russia. And to the extent that that's been successful, I think we could debate. But I just think that there's so much more to, potentially that line of thinking. Like if you're thinking,
these guys know so much more about this war than Kyle. You can see it in his face as they're talking. He seems so uninterested. Let's
like,
continue.
how does the United States think about this? Then what it boils down to is like, we're doing this out of any kind of like, goodness in our hearts, because it would just be so incomparable to how we've treated other invaded countries around the world.
I mean, if it's going to be a really short conversation if you want me to concede that the U.S. doesn't, that the U.S. acts selfishly and like an imperialist power on the world stage, because I think that's fucking super obvious. That's the most obvious thing in the world to me. I mean,
that's obvious. But here comes the nuance. Watch. I see a nuance on the horizon.
That's all there is. We arm 73% of the world's dictatorships. So this notion that we are,
73%, but then we're gonna vote for them. Then we're gonna make up. Then we're gonna make up this progressive Democrat strategy and try to take over those people.
Principally involved in democracy and spreading democracy and being the world police, and that's why we do the things we do, because our intentions are so good. I think that's obviously not true. I think that when talking about this particular conflict, though, the nuance that a lot of people are missing is that sometimes you could accidentally
the right position, the right-wing position that everybody's missing. Anytime he says nuance, substitute that for right-wing position.
Accidentally wind up on a side that is not wrong, and just like I said, if the U.S. happened to arm Palestinians that are not Hamas and it's to defend Palestine, now they'd never do that, but if they did do that, I would say, wow, that's certainly an interesting and debatable thing, because on the one hand, I don't want to be a massive global.
It's funny how this conversation, when he keeps bringing in Palestine, it's funny how it never leads to, no, don't fund Palestine. How about we just stop funding Israel? You notice how that never comes up? Why don't we just stop funding Israel, Kyle? Why aren't y'all bringing up the fact that we're funding Israel in this conversation, in this analogy?
I don't understand this. Global arms dealer, but on the other hand, if we're going to arm anybody, I'd rather it go to them than the 73% of the world's dictatorships. So to your question about NATO specifically, NATO encroachment, yes, I used to think that was, if not the only reason for Russian aggression, I thought it was maybe the predominant reason, that like the majority reason why they're doing what they're doing.
So he said, no, I didn't think it was only, I thought it was a majority reason. So it's other reasons. So now he's saying that is not even the majority reason.
Is because they feel existentially threatened by NATO encroachment. Now, having watched the war unfold, having seen the actions that Putin has taken, and I think more importantly, just listen to his own words in his speech when he announced the invasion, I'm now of the belief that I think he would have done this anyway, even if NATO never expanded. But
off that last statement right there, I don't understand. If his audience just heard that last statement, it would be, I'm never listening to you again. I'm never listening to you again, Kyle. Maybe play this again.
US invaded Iraq. We had this whole list of reasons and grievances. It's like, oh, he has weapons of mass destruction. Oh, he's really bad against the Kurds. He's a brutal dictator. Like, they kept changing the reason and moving the goalposts, and they had their narrative and their propaganda, and all of it effectively was bullshit. Because I think fundamentally what it was for was oil. This is what an imperial.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not go back far enough? My bad, everybody. To that point that I was trying to find.
Or not Hamas, and it's to defend Palestine. Now, they'd never do that, but if they did do that, I would say, wow, that's certainly an interesting and debatable thing, because on the one hand, I don't want to be a massive global arms dealer, but on the other hand, if we're going to arm anybody, I'd rather it go to them than the 73% of the world's dictatorships. So to your question about NATO specifically, NATO encroachment, yes, I used to think that was, if not the only reason for Russian aggression, I thought it was maybe the predominant reason. That, like, the majority reason why they're doing what they're doing is because they feel existentially threatened by NATO encroachment. Now, having watched the war unfold, having seen the actions that Putin has taken, and I think more importantly, just listen to his own words in his speech when he announced the invasion, I'm now of the belief that I think he would have done this anyway, even if NATO never expanded.
The foreign policy by the professional managerial class is atrocious. And they think their atrocious ideas can be covered up by saying it's nuance. I think I'm going to end it there. I think I'm going to have to do this in parts because, like, I'm barely at 25 minutes and there's a bunch of stuff towards the back, for example, that we can also talk about. Let's see what he says.
Just away from the brink. It's okay. So I understand the disagreement. I get where she's coming from. I get where you guys are coming from. I just think when you look at the micro picture, the details matter to me, at least. And they sort of annoy me when it's sort of like a bullshit way they're going about it. And then, of course, the other thing was
yeah. And I don't know if I chimed in on the...
You have to do negotiation and diplomacy and get some sort of a deal. And that goes for Russia and Ukraine, and that goes for Israel and Palestine.
Agreed.
Right? Like, that's the main position of the left should be negotiation, diplomacy, find some sort of deal. The downside of a deal is nobody's really going to be happy. You're going to have people who are like barely okay with a deal, right? But if you can get a barely okay shit on both sides of it, then, we're everting potential apocalypse. So you have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty inarguable. And I think that anyone that argues against that is just straight up silly.
We're really not to take we're not to take the professional managerial class seriously whatsoever on foreign policy. They're not serious. They don't even really
give him an
learn
excuse.
it.
I don't want to give him something he could point to say, well, actually, that's the reason. Because really, it's propaganda in the same way that when the U.S. invaded Iraq, we had this whole list of reasons and grievances. It's like, oh, he has weapons of mass destruction. Oh.
I'm going to stop there and just squeeze past it by 30 seconds here.
Where, he's, essentially, kind of made the case that I think you were alluding to, which is, sending diplomats and trying to negotiate some sort of peaceful settlement. But I'm wondering what kind of compromises you think would be necessary for Putin to concede to a ceasefire, and do you think one exists where Ukraine still has some of its country left as its like sovereign nation? Or what are your thoughts on?
Okay. So first of all, that's a great question. In fact, I would go as far as to say that is like the question. That is the only thing that actually matters in this conversation. And that's actually why I was super annoyed by these protesters because the main thing they were arguing for was not, hey, get a peace deal, do diplomacy, negotiate, like let's find a way.
Do a peace deal, negotiate. The protesters he got demolished, and we did a stream on this. He got demolished in his own comments when he covered that protest of AOC because he was completely wrong. And as you can tell in this video, he has not reflected on that and learned that from his mistakes. He's just doubling down on the bad policy. And now he thinks by him saying they didn't say in their protest words, do a peace deal, as if saying avert a nuclear war isn't saying get to peace. The protection of the squad and these people is to the death for the professional managerial class, the pseudo left, the NATO left. It's to the death.
The way out of this, the main thing they kept asking for was stop arming Ukraine. And I do think there's a fundamental difference between, like, the first thing in the conversation needs to be peace deal. Okay, that's the first thing. So to answer your question specifically, what would I do? And I did a whole thing on this.
So he's saying now the protesters didn't protest right. Your chant didn't include a couple of more words. Do anybody buy this from this guy? Like I said, some of you know him, I guess, when he was making good points. I've always known him at this ridiculous point. So I don't get why people listen to this person. I don't get, and I say this a lot when we're analyzing him, like, I don't get why that is. It just makes no sense why people listen to him, to me. But hey, there was a couple of things I still wanted to cover, but we'll close. Let me throw that up so we know as a marker when we're editing. We just closed that segment. All right, so let me see. Where's that other video? This is on a different, just side note. We'll kind of look and see what's happening on Twitter, but this thing here, I think I'm going to cover with Nick, or I want to cover with Nick. And let me actually back out so I can get the quote tweet. Let me blow it up. So this is something that I would think I'm going to cover. The U.S. imposes sanctions and steals Syrian oil and wheat. They are starving the nation. Meanwhile, Western media and human rights bodies obediently keep quiet. United States is the biggest human rights abusers. And he's quote tweeting this here, and it says the U.S. is stealing 66,000 barrels of oil every day from Syria out of a total production of 80,000 barrels per day. Thought that was amazing, and I think we'll cover that in one of the Nick and CJ segments or shows. Let's go to another thing I wanted to kind of shout out for all of you to see. Here is another from the progressive center left outlet, The Guardian. California police more than twice as likely to use force against Black people. And this person, I'm sure Nick will want to cover this, so we'll probably cover this too. New California data on police stops. Black youth ages 15 to 17 searched at a six times the rate of white teenagers. Black youth ages 10 to 7 handcuffed, detained at higher rate than all other groups. Police use force twice as often against Black residents. So that's another story I want to cover with him. This might be another one. This one's from Jacobin. To win universal social programs and pro-working class policies in America, the left needs to win outside of the traditional democratic strongholds, and that means having the message of organizing that can capture the attentions of millions. The left needs more than low-hanging fruit to win power. And that's Jacobin's attempt to address that, and it's not that good. I'm just going to tell you that. Then we have this video that blew up. Nick was on the Jimmy Show yesterday. It's a 1-minute clip. Let's just play it. Got a little time at the end of the stream. I prepared for a shorter stream because I didn't want to go over time, so I could pick up my middle daughter on time. So that's the reason. Let's listen to Nick and Jimmy.
So you're saying don't blame your neighbor for your pain. You should join with your neighbor and love your neighbor, even though the establishment wants you to hate your neighbor and might even call your neighbor a Trumper. They're not the person who's responsible for your pain. The people responsible for your pain are Democrats and Republicans who have been running this country for the last 400 years. Go ahead.
My message, I want us to have the same class loyalty that the ruling class have. Like, you see capitalists infighting every once in a while, but you see how loyal they are to each other at the end of the day, because you see how Hakeem Jeffries fall in line with his judge. You see how there are a ton of bipartisan deals to cut the military budget, to fund the military budget and get corporate bailouts. Even though they may have small disagreements, they will always come together and get things done. That's what I want from the working class. Even though we may have some random cultural fights, I want us to have a militant love and respect for each other and the willingness to improve each other's material needs. And that's what we need. And the ruling class, they have that solidarity. I just want us to have that. We can fight, we can disagree, but at the end of the day, our material needs is the most important. And I think we should drop any other small cultural disagreements in order to challenge the ruling class. That's what I truly believe. And I think that's the message that MLK brought, and that is the kind of shit that got him killed and many other radicals that were trying to bring people together.
Yeah, that's just a great tweet. Actually, I'm going to cover one last video. I forgot Emma and Anna had a discussion that I wanted to cover. So I'll throw this in a very, very short segment. So if you're here, you're lucky that you stay, because this is unplanned. So 288 likes. Can we get to 310? There's several new people who haven't liked the video yet. So let's push to 310. That's not too many more. That's like 25 more. 25 more people hit that like button. There's our Substack. Join our Substack to get notifications when we go live, like when we're going to go live with Max Blumenthal. Don't know the time yet, but it'll be good if you're on our Substack to get that notification tomorrow sometime. And also clips. Like, we're going to have a clip later today. I actually probably should change the time because I think it's scheduled to start at 3. Is it scheduled to start at 3? Yeah, so I'm going to adjust this to 3:45 here. So what CIA infiltration tactics does the pseudo left use? That's the clip that is premiering tonight, and it's going to be premiering at 6:45 p.m. So in about an hour, roughly an hour, that's going to be going to premiere. Now let's go back to YouTube and just quickly show you a couple of clips. This was where did I think I may have put it. And what is that thing called? Watch later? Did I put it in watch later? I have so many accounts. I gotta stop using so many accounts because I don't put everything. All right, so where did they talk? Okay, so I'll just go to TYT. Let's just go there. So I think TYT is doing something different where they're doing these segments. Anna's doing these segments with Emma, and I don't know if this is a new thing, and I'm just not last to get on it. So you tell me if I'm just new at this. Okay, so it's called These MAGA Loyalists Just Got Some Seats on Powerful House Committee. I wonder if that's it. Let me make sure that's it. No, it's this one. It's this one here. So I almost had another segment today. This would have been the other segment, but I got to show you the video because they actually let me do it. I'll do it real quick. So this is Anna and Emma having a discussion about Kristen Sinema and what's her name? Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. So let's start here and listen.
Christopher Wray. So he's there. And
actually, let's go back a little bit.
I can give you the details.
So the Davos Forum is happening, and Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, and some other people are over there, and they gave a high five to standing up to the filibuster in their eyes, and everybody in progressive pseudo-left media came out and had to do a video about just a high five, literally just this. Oh, it's like, go to Humanist Report, you have a video. I think National has a video. TYT has a video. They all have a video just off of that. It's absurd because their whole selling point is to sell, those are the bad Democrats, we are the good Democrats. That's their whole point. So Anna and Emma, we'll call this. And let's put that up. Oops. Let's give her a capital. So Anna and Emma, and we're going to listen and let's get started.
More than 600 CEOs will be in town, including Wall Street executives such as JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon, David Solomon from Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley's James Gorman. Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat from Delaware, and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp are also in attendance. So is, weirdly, FBI Director Christopher Wray. So he's there. And in addition to that, there are 51 heads of state from around the world attending the World Economic Forum, where essentially the world's elite conspire on how to essentially keep neoliberalism alive and well. I can give you more details on that in just a moment. But Emma, I saw this story after you tweeted about it, and it's just infuriating how much Senate Democrats Sinema's no longer identifying as a Democrat, but you get the point. She was elected as a Democrat. But to see her and Joe Manchin basically rub in our faces that they served as obstructionists to Joe Biden's agenda is pretty gross.
Absolutely. And I mean, the filibuster is an anti-democratic principle. And the fact that she and Manchin side by side are getting applause from that crowd is not shocking because elites, capitalists are terrified of direct democracy. Because the House has a lot of problems, right? I mean, with Nancy Pelosi, she's no longer the leader of the Democrats, but for her entire tenure,
So Manchin and Sinema are useful to the DNC to pretend the rest are somehow actually good. That's the point. And it's so, I don't know if people like TYT Majority Report, I don't know if they're pretending like they don't know this point, that Manchin and Sinema, Manchin specifically, is doing what the DNC wants. And that's what's missing in this critique. It's because they can't include that because they're still trying to sell Democratic, progressive Democrats. So yeah, let's continue with this video.
she did what she could to stamp out more progressive legislation for sure. But at the very least, you don't need a 60 vote threshold for that. Right. You just need a majority. And what Sinema and Manchin are doing at this forum is auditioning for corporate donations for power players in that room and essentially saying, without us, you might actually have the American people deciding on things, and that won't be very good for you. So it's not entirely shocking to me that Christopher Wray is there.
Like, do they really believe two people are against what everybody else wants on the Democratic Party, and that's why we don't have it? Is that a serious critique, Emma? Anna?
Given corporate America's fealty to and like friendliness with the intelligence community, and also just the fact that both of them are there at the same time. They are the most important soldiers for corporations and for wealthy people within the Democratic caucus more largely, because they have made promises that they are going to ensure that, despite the fact that the Senate in and of itself is an incredibly undemocratic institution. I mean, when it was 50-50 split, the Democratic 50 represented 40 million more Americans than the Republican 50. They want to add an extra layer of undemocracy on top of it, meaning you need 60 votes to get almost anything done except for budgetary things in the Senate. And so what they serve is corporate America, and they make it abundantly clear with their attendance and with their rhetoric at this conference.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible, because just to go back and provide a little more context and help the audience understand the level of disdain people like us have for the Joe Manchins and Kyrsten Sinemas in the Senate.
Yeah.
They are the ones who succeeded in defeating key provisions in the Build Back Better agenda, provisions that would have allowed for Medicare to negotiate.
Oh, this is what Anna and Emma are either, and it's the same thing with Kyle. And like I said, they either are sorely uninformed, or they have that information and they're not giving it to their audience. Joe Manchin and Sinema are doing exactly what the Democratic Party want, because the Democratic Party doesn't want to do any of the things that they virtue signal they want to do. They have the same donors as the Republicans. This is what the progressive strategy has, this huge loophole, this flaw here. Are we to believe that there's a different strategy or a different plan? If I'm Boeing, if I'm Amazon, and I'm donating to both parties, am I donating and I have two different plans? Do I have a red plan and a blue plan? Or do I just have an Amazon plan, regardless of who's there, red or blue, and that's what's going to be executed? That's what's lacking in the progressive strategy analysis of electoral politics. But I digress. Let's continue.
Pharmaceutical drug prices, that would have brought the costs associated with Medicare down. And who funds Medicare? Us, the US taxpayer.
Like,
who gets
are we to believe, Anna, that these two people stopped all of that and then Biden, nothing happens from the Democratic Party? But if progressives hold out a vote, then all kind of stuff happens to them. Like I said, either she's sorely uninformed or she knows it and she's not giving that information to her audience so that she can skew them to think that the Democratic Party can be saved through progressive Democrats.
Price gouged on pharmaceutical drugs, Medicare recipients. And these goons are the ones who, again, served as the obstructionists to those key provisions. Funding for childcare, which this country so desperately needs. So many women have not been able to re-enter the job market because of the fact that
you see how to me this is terrible, and the progressive in the professional managerial class does this. What this segment is doing now, let's say you're their audience and you're not as in tune in politics. You're sharpening your anger just for two people. You're not sharpening your anger because of what Joe Biden is participating in this, what Nancy Pelosi is participating in this, Chuck Schumer. They are helping to just focus that energy of disappointment just on two people instead of the whole party.
Childcare is astronomical in this country right now. There were all sorts of things included in that Build Back Better agenda, which were effectively stripped out thanks to Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. I do want to also talk a little bit about what the theme of the World Economic Forum was this year. They're very concerned about the tight labor market. Gee, I wonder why, Emma, why would they be concerned about a tight labor market? Meaning less workers are willing to, take the garbage wages and the terrible working conditions that some of these.
Are you talking about the railroad strikers that the Squad and progressives voted for? Is that what you're talking about? Conditions like that, like working without sick leave?
Companies are basically forcing upon their labor force, right? So it gives these workers a little more leverage in a tight labor market. They hate it and they want to squash it. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, this is what you hear constantly from business news people like, I don't know, CEOs, Fortune 500 company folks. They are terrified of the, as you say, tight labor market, which essentially means that right now workers have more leverage than is comfortable for these folks. And that's why you have Sinema and Manchin saying, hey, everything's gonna be okay. A lot of stuff isn't gonna get passed because we promise you that we're gonna hold the line on your behalf.
And that's the same thing that AOC said. Hold on, and progressives, everything's gonna be okay. We're gonna vote to break this strike. That's the problem with this progressive strategy. There's always a critique to your left because you are supporting a lot of the same things you're saying about the Democrats in the progressive a lot of the same things you're saying about the Republicans, you're supporting in the progressive Democratic party or strategy.
Into that fiction, as well as laws that are completely stacked against workers in this country.
Absolutely, and I think one of the specific and recent examples was how Congress was willing to crush the rail workers and prevent them from striking. And what they were asking for in order to prevent the strike, what the workers were asking for was something so incredibly reasonable. Please give us a few days off per year without retaliation so we can deal with family emergencies and other unforeseen issues we might have living our lives.
Manchin and Sinema is terrible for blocking this legislation, but AOC and the squad and progressives aren't cancelable for voting to break a strike. This is the professional managerial class, and this ridiculousness, like this example I just gave, is one of the reasons why they should not be the people with the mic of this on the left. They should not be giving advice. No one should be listening to the professional managerial class, people like Emma, Kyle, Anna, Jank, Sam, truly have no idea what they're talking about. And they love to use nuance when they want to cover up for a right-wing position. And I'm going to leave you with this closeout video from Malcolm. I hope it works. Let's see.
Poor neighborhood, you're living in an area where you have to have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. And when you get a poor education, you are destined to be a poor man and a poor woman the rest of your life. Poor education, you can only work on a poor paying job. And that poor paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it's a very vicious cycle. And usually these bad housing conditions result from the fact, as Mr. Gray has pointed out, of absentee landlords, people who are rich and live downtown and let you and I live up here in the shack. Actually, it's a form of 20th century slavery. And what you and I have to let the man know is we are peaceful people. We are loving people. We love everybody who loves us. But we don't love anybody who doesn't love us. When you live in a poor neighborhood,